about it. I'm afraid we have time for only one more question, which...
You should go to Amelia.
Should we go to Amelia? Okay.
Somewhere in the alphabet, you say an explainer always happy to find a village, which is a reversal of
A
Gertrude's...
village explainer.
Yeah, which is a reversal of Gertrude Stein's quip about Ezra Pound, is that he was a village explainer always, which is great if you're a village, if not, not. And I was wondering what your relationship, problematic or otherwise, was to Pound. I mean, you have similar epic tendencies, and if you could kind of talk about that.
Well, I've tried not to become a crazy old fascist.
But I love that phrase, similar epic tendencies.
Yes, right. You know, I think I may have mentioned yesterday when I was 19 years old, I actually wrote to Ezra Pound telling him how to finish the cantos. So I've been thinking about Pound a long time in those terms. Huh?
What was your suggestion?
My suggestion to Pound was reading, going back to your question about globalism, reading the direction his work was going about the questions of finance, multiculturality, the use of visual in poetry. I suggested that the last canto should be a duotone photograph of the Hong Kong harbor with the high-rises in the background and Chinese junks, traditional peasant boats in the foreground.
Did you get an answer?
I never got an answer, but that is my conclusion to the cantos, and was my conclusion when I was 19 years old. And in that sense, I mean, Pound has always been an attractive figure to me because Pound, of all the poets of the first generation of modernist, seemed to be the one who took the project the most seriously. And since what I wanted to do in my life was to deal with the world in the most serious possible fashion I could, you know, that seemed like an interesting challenge. When I was at Berkeley at one point, I went through his unedited letters, which were there on microfilm, and read all of them with the Mussolini quotes in the stationery and the whole 9 yards, and realized a whole series of things, one of which is that Pound, like Charles Olson later on, did an awful lot of good for other kinds of artists simply by introducing one person to another. That an awful lot of the successful organization of modernism and postmodernism is somebody saying, you know, you should meet her, or you should meet him. The two of you have some interesting stuff to talk about. You know, later on today I'm going to record a podcast about Paul Blackburn, a poet who hasn't been around in 40 years, and I asked Joel and Daisy Freed if they would come and do it with me. And it was because I thought each of them bring completely different, interesting elements to the work of somebody who isn't around to talk for himself at this point in history. And it's exactly that kind of connection that seems to me the most fertile for coming up with some new thing, whether it's knowledge or information or even new questions, because you know the questions are often more important than the answers in those terms. So in that sense, you know, I look at Pound sort of like the great crazy uncle. And he certainly is all of that. He's still a great writer. He's still a terrible person, you know, and the fact that both of these can be true is a very complicated thing to have to think about. I mean, he's not the only great writer who's a terrible person either. It's unfortunately a bit of a disease.
Somewhere out there, Ron, there's a 19-year-old, either here or elsewhere, who's going to write you a letter telling you how you can finish Universe.
Well, I hope they get it right.
But the difference between you and Pound is that you will answer the letter.